Welcome back to the lab. Summer's gone part-time. It's not very warm in the mornings or at night, but so you might see the beanie come back. Remember NISFest? That was a good event, wasn't it? Nissans and Datsuns, all things powered by, back in 2010, Hampton Downs. It should come back, I reckon, shouldn't it? On topic. Fuel pump system in the K12 March. That 1,000 horsepower thing there. 1,000 horsepower. 826 at the hubs. Fuel tank system. I'm kind of pointing at it on the screen, but it looks like I'm pointing at something far out. I babble so much. The last video that not many of you watched because apparently I babbled too much. Basically what I said was the pumps, if you run both the pumps at full bore, was too much flow for the regulator and you got a false high. So if you set the regulator at say 360 kPa, both pumps running full bore would actually bump it up. So you think you've set it at 400. Then as you go through the power range of the engine, start using that fuel, it drags the pressure back down to like 360. So it's not good, it's not ideal. So I put the pumps onto what they call pulse width modulation, which is basically the computer controlling the engine, then changes the amount of power that goes to the pumps, it slows them down. So then you have control of that. And then I wasn't happy with that. So then I took the regulator apart and drilled a bigger hole in it basically. And now it's good, it's really good. But then I did some math and some calculations and some more calculations and went WTF and did a whole heap more. And then I realized those fuel pumps just aren't actually big enough for what we're doing. So the drop in pressure that we were seeing at the top end was from two reasons, and we must have only just been getting away with it. So there are new pumps. New pumps. There's a part number there if anyone wants a part number. We could do an unbox. That could be pretty easy. It's ridiculous how small these things are for the amount of, there's a screen that goes on the bottom, for the amount of liquid they can move. Yes, it came out. There you go. 470 litres per hour at, I think it's 40 PSI and 13.5 volts. So two 44 gallon drums and some spare. Just from that, that's not enough for the March. It's mind blowing, isn't it? So we need two of those. So then we have, oh, can I do the math? 940 litres per hour at 40 PSI at 13.5 volts. That should be enough. Except we actually run, when this is going, making lots of noise, full throttle and you know, full revs, everything, full boost, whole lot, it's about 85 PSI fuel pressure. So you're getting dizzy, I'm getting dizzy. So the 470 litres per hour, as the pressure comes up, the flow goes down. So these are big enough though. These are big enough. And then the problem with those is they're going to draw 21 amps. I'll go slowly so you don't get seasick. What's in there, that only draws 14.5 amps maxed out. And so we've got a 15 amp plug here. If we put 21 amps through our 15 amp plug, we're going to have smoke and melty things and broken car on the side of racetrack, possibly on fire. So we've got this this doofer here that Aeroflow make, and a few other manufacturers provide basically the same thing. They're probably all made in China and they just put their different labels on them. Basically that does the same thing, just in a slightly different way, and that can handle 30 amps. So when that's drawing 21, even if we manage to draw a little bit more, and even if these guys are talking a little bit caca, a little bit lying by a 33% margin or whatever, that should still be all right. That should do the job. So we've got pumps, we've got a connector, we've got the proper ones of these that I talked about. We'll fit these onto these just because they're here. And the other ones, if I take them off, the other pumps is just not worth faffing around with. So we'll do that. So let's get into it. I'm going to tear all that stuff apart. There's some welding to do on that top panel on the fuel tank. Get your words right, Mr. Glenn. We'll get into it. Uh-oh. 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 Oh, I thought I was going to get into this and it was going to be great fun. Get in there. That's about it. 10. Those barbs are about 10. Oh, 10.7. Right. Take note of that number. 10.7. Actually, look, here's what you can do. 0. All right, and then oh no. Oh no. They finned it. They finned it on the I'm not going to call it a tit. Can I call it a tit? It's a barb. That's supposed to go over the top of that, but they've made the barbs too big. Yeah, it's never easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So I need to reduce those down so that our fancy fitting will fit on there. The O-ring's no problem. The O-ring can just slip over, but yeah, you can't get the nut over there, and this will also only go that far and then stop, which probably isn't a big deal. If you put the O-ring in between. A million ways to fix that, but sandpaper ought to sort it out. Sandpaper. See, self-moving sandpaper. Round sandpaper that goes round and round. Speaking of paper, bit of paper, focus, stuffed in the end of the pumps there so we don't get any crap in there, debris, stuff and things. The size of wires they put on these puppies. And then a significantly smaller wire on the plug bit they supply, but hey, whatever. Yeah, so I'm not going to try and do this one-handed and film it because I'll stuff it, and that's a pretty important piece of the pump. So I'll get that done. Look, Mum, no hands. Thank you to camera person. Whoa, hey, go and do my teeth. Right, very carefully. That's probably even too much. Wow. Mega careful. Leave it there. Do you reckon it'll fit? Oh, we have to take that out, I suppose. No. More required. It may be to the point where those barbs are basically completely gone. It's only a $300 fuel pump. Hey, there we go. That goes on there. That goes on there. It's supposed to go on there. That's quite tricky to do with it doing that. That'll jam inside there. And that goes there. Now I need to get some spanners out, but you get the gist of it. Pump 1, good. Pump 2, halfway done. Loud pop from the Dremel and it went full send, full RPM, despite not being set at full RPM. So this was actually faulty from new, and it was repaired a long time ago, 10 years ago, 2015. Has to be, surely, unless they've written it a weird way. Yeah, so 2015, so 10 years ago that was faulty and it was repaired. That's quite a long time. It probably hasn't done a heck of a lot of use since then. But yeah, definitely went pop and went full send, so I won't be turning that on again until maybe it's replaced or whatever. You'll see a sharp blade sitting there. You can get focus if you're careful. You can use a sharp blade to remove those barbs as well, but it's not ideal, but that's what's going to happen now, seeing as that blowderized itself up. Old lot pulled out of the car, clearly. Something interesting that I just spotted. Looks like we were heading for some sort of a falling apart, failing incident with our fancy. That was actually quite expensive, that plug. Yeah, that's not good. Not impressed. Never mind. Just as well we were replacing that, and I need to look carefully at the photo that I took the last time this stuff was out of the car, because it actually hasn't gone anywhere since. See whether that was busted before and I didn't spot it, or whether it has just randomly disintegrated, sitting around doing nothing. Oh, what we got there? Anyway, time to rip all that stuff off completely, and get this in there, and hopefully this doesn't do that sort of thing. There we go. Skipped a step or two. Why was that hard to say today? Could have welded around the outside there, which is probably what a lot of people would do. But to try and make it look sharp and nice and tidy, I welded it on the inside. Yeah, a little bit of blackness, a bit dirty there, isn't it? But that's a reasonable weld. And then I've buffed the top, knocked the top of the welds off of here, just in case it sits on top of the fuel tank where it's trying to seal. And check that it's all relatively flat now that we've put a crap ton of heat in this area. So good. Now I could take that down the road and get that anodized, and it would look absolutely awesome. But time constraints and stuff, and I don't really want the car sitting around with the fuel tank open. It'll be fine like that. The rest of the tank's silver anyway. So the next step is basically to put the doofo, which has got a plug in the bottom and plug in the top. You stick that in there like that, except you have to align it so that the wires that come out of here and the plugging and everything doesn't interfere with the fittings that come through the top here. So I'll get that sorted out. Good progress. That's all mounted and test fitted in the car. I'm assuming it'll fit. The screens on the bottom there, basically the same size as what was on there, slightly different shape, but pretty much take up the same surface area. So I've made the little sub harness here. It's a shame those plugs are brown. Why not black? But anyway, so those will plug into there. These aren't long enough to go directly into this, and I didn't want to join the wires, so there we go. We'll just use these plugs, and it makes it possible to take one pump out and not the other, and all that sort of carry on. I'm not sure if they thought this through properly with this product, because this is supposed to plug into here like that. Spot the problem. So yeah, they kind of didn't really think that through. That latch part there, that's fine, that's what we need. That'll go into, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little clip inside there, that'll work. That's all fine, that's all well and good, but this stuff here just has to go. At least that little red piece, maybe the other bit can stay. Yeah, the other bit can stay. They're just too lazy to ping that off in the factory for you. You have to do it yourself. She's back in. She's back in there. That doesn't look awful. A little bit of sealant I need to clean up down there to make it look a little bit nicer. It's already gone hard. So next step is to get that harness sorted out. The old one's on the bench behind us. I had made it with a Deutsch connector. It's behind here, such an annoying spot for it to be there, because the pins on the PDM for the 25 amp channels, actually they have two pins that can do 15 amps each. Otherwise you'd have to have a different style of plug on there to get your 25 amps out of each one. So what I did was I ran those two wires to the Deutsch connector with the 4 in the one thing. So there's 2 fuel pumps, 2 channels, so 4 pins, if you know what I mean. And then ran those in the harness all the way up to there. So that was the harness. Of course, these As I said earlier, these little wee pins here, they're worth 15 amps, and we're going to try and put 21 through there, so that's not going to work. Oh, by the way, that just popped out, and then it plugged in, so shouldn't give them too much of a hard time. So these 4 wires, they came up, and at some stage in this harness, they join to be just one wire. These are the earths, obviously. Even these have to be replaced. These earths are not worth 21 amps, and actually running both of them into just the one terminal, it'll smoke that terminal. If you try and push effectively 42 amps through that one terminal there, that's going to turn to a ball of smoke very quickly. So what I'm getting at is I may actually delete this Deutsch connector 4-way plug, just run my 2 wires straight from the PDM all the way through, throwing stuff around, all the way through the harness, and then join those 2 wires together at this terminal here. Should be big enough to do that quite safely, I think. Less connections equals less resistance and less failure points, and tidier looking. Nearly said engine bay. I mean, that is the engine bay originally, but it's a front or whatever we want to call it now. Sorted. Looks a little bit rank on the bench, doesn't it? The bench is a bit messy. Oh no, he put the Deutsch connector back on there. Yeah, I just figured it was easier to just leave it well enough and alone, so to speak, and then I can make the harness up on the bench, and then when I change my mind and do something else with it later on, it'll be easier to do. Better not lose those pins in case we want to. Hey look, they gave us some spare ones. 2, 4, 6. And there should only be 4. Ah, they gave us some extras in case we screwed it up. That is ready to fit in the car like that. That should work, shouldn't it? Is it going to go? All done, rightio. Oh look, reflection, hey. Pretty happy with that, except for that brown plug with the red pin in it. That's not good at all. I did have a look at, because that'll spin around quite freely. Bearing in mind there's cables and stuff underneath that you need to make sure they don't get tangled up and rub against something, chafe against something if you do turn one of those around. So I could direct that way so it hides the brownness and run the wires through here. But the problem with that is there's actually not really a lot of room there, and it might chafe and rub and wear through, and arky sparky and bad things would happen. So I started up and ran it and actually pulled a little bit of duty cycle out of the PWM tables. I basically slowed the pumps down as you would expect, because what's in there shifts a lot more than what's on the bench over there that used to be in there. So pretty successful, pretty happy with that. Now all we got to do is find some time to get it on the dyno and set it all up properly. What I've done is a bit of a guess. It might be all right. I did have it set up initially, injected duty cycle versus engine RPM, and I changed my mind just 10 minutes ago and did it injected duty cycle versus MAP, so manifold air pressure, because I figured that's probably the better one to go against, because as the air pressure goes up and the manifold fuel pressure also goes up, so then you're going to need more grunt from the pumps to keep up with that. And then the other one is the injected duty cycle. Obviously, the more those taps are open, the more you're going to need from your pumps. So we've got the two that will, the primary ones, I think. Engine RPM, yes, as the engine RPM goes up, you also need more fuel, but probably not as big a change there as what there is with manifold air pressure going up, if you know what I mean. All right, that'll do. Thanks for watching. Next video, maybe the March on the dyno, except for the R34 GTT, which has just been on the dyno, and you'll see that one shortly. Thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.